Title belts to Hall of Fame. Doug and Tommy carved the name. Fists of fury and hearts of gold. Every story, every fight retold. Tales of glory, laughter, cry. Tennessee warriors with hearts open wide. In the ring or on the air, legends living without a care. On the mic they roar, on the mat they soar. Dangerous conversations, fans wanting more. Podcast kings ruling the waves. Memphis wrestling raising the stage.
Hey everybody, welcome once again to another episode of Dangerous Conversations. Except this week, it's a little different. Dangerous Doug Gilbert had something else come up. He had to step away at the very last moment. So this week, it's going to be Dangerous Conversations with Tommy Wildfire Rich. Tommy, how you doing this evening, man?
I'm doing wonderful, Gene. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing great. I always enjoy when we're all on here, but I think this will be fun, having a little one-on-one time, getting to talk to you here, and a little peek behind the curtain for everybody. This is actually the second time this week we're recording. We actually recorded an episode on Monday night with our friend Del Rios, the Spellbinder, and due to the show itself had a number of technical difficulties, and then after the fact, the file got corrupted. But anyway, that interview has been completely lost. We'll have to interview Spellbinder again some other time, but we're going to have some fun tonight.
Match of me and Buzz Sawyer that was lost for so long. Maybe it'll turn up.
That's right. Maybe 20 years from now, that recording will be found, and people can. I mean, there was some good stuff there. You guys shared some fun stories, and there was some impressions done, and so I wouldn't hate it if that turned up eventually.
Yeah, I mean, Dale's such a great guy too. Like I said, I met him when he come down, and he was 280 pounds of chiseled steel, and being in that New York area, they all little cockier, but Dale was real good people, and just enjoyed him. Had a lot of fun with him. Drew some money with him too. I mean, it was a good run.
Absolutely, man. He stood out. He came in. He had that. The Spellbinder gimmick was cool, but like you said, just muscles from head to toe. Like he stood out. Like Dale, when Dale walked out in public, whether it was in his wrestling garb or just through the airport or whatever, he stood out. You knew he was a wrestler. You knew he was somebody, even if you didn't know who he was. And
he always had a magic trick.
That's right.
I don't take a lot to entertain me, but I loved it. Yeah, he didn't have to be real good, in which I don't remember if he was real good or not. But he showed me a couple of tricks, man. He always entertained me too.
Yeah, that was the thing. He actually was trained on being a magician and all that. So it wasn't just a wrestling gimmick. Like he was a real, I guess, a shoot magician. Is that would that even be a term? I don't know. I think it's all the work, right?
He could do. Yeah, he was good. Like he spent a lot of time. I mean, you figure between the bodybuilding, learning to wrestle, and learning to, some people can say they can do a magic trick and do a little bit, but Dale he was pretty good.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to get him back on here pretty soon, but you've been the talk of wrestling here this past week, Tommy. I've had a lot of people sending me texts and private messages. One of the first things that came up about you, and oddly enough, this was happening probably as we were recording that interview we were just talking, but on Monday Night Raw, somebody was out in the crowd and they had a Wildfire Tommy Rich for the WWE Hall of Fame sign. Now, how cool is that, man?
Well, that's a good friend of mine, Chad Adams. Big shout out to him and Vicky and Terry. Yeah, they was at the show, and they texted me, said, look, and I wasn't watching it. I tuned into it, and I'll be doggone, I seen the sign. Yeah, they campaigning for me, man. I really appreciate it.
Man, we're gonna follow up with that on the show because that needs to happen, man. there's a lot of people already in that WWE Hall of Fame that shouldn't have been in there before Tommy Rich. So kudos to them because I mean, that made it on Netflix quite a few times throughout the night. Like I said, people have been sending that to me, all different angles of it and different shots of it. So we're going to keep that momentum going because, man, it would be really awesome to see you up there on that stage one day, Tommy, being in the Hall of Fame. If anybody deserves it, you certainly do, my friend.
Thank you very much, Bubba. I sure appreciate it. Hey, big shout out to all the fans, though. I'm so blessed to be here tonight, and still folks know who Tommy Wildfire Rich is. That's Hall of Fame enough. Absolutely,
man. They remember and they still love you. So that's cool to know. And somebody else, speaking WWE Hall of Fame, there was a WWE Hall of Famer who was talking about you on his podcast. He's got a podcast that gets just all kinds of views and listens and everything each week. And I had a lot of people sending me this clip going, hey, have you seen this? Has Tommy seen this? Have y'all heard it? And I said, well, if he hasn't, we're going to make sure he does. So let's check this out real quick, Tommy. We'll let you hear this, see what you think about it, and then we'll let you comment on it on the other side. Here is The Undertaker talking about a prank call that him and Bryan Adams did to the grappler Lynn Denton, another recent former guest of Dangerous Conversations. Check this out, folks.
It was me, Bryan Adams, and Barry Darsow. We are lit. He's filling me in on the backstory, how much heat Tiger has with Don Owens and the territory. So Bryan calls Lynn Denton as Tiger Chung Lee. This is a Tiger. Maybe I could come in. Maybe I'll start work. Lynn knows that is a no-go. Well, you know what? I got a booking meeting with Don. I'm going to need like $800 and part of the book. Tiger, I don't know. I'm going to be able to do all that, right? And he goes, no, you tell that no good as son Don Owens, and he'll owe me for making his territory good. You know, I'll talk to him and we'll see what we can do. I'm going to call him back as Tommy. Hey, it's Tommy. Hey, Tommy, how you doing, man? I'm in a bad way down here, brother. Hey, man, you think you guys might be able, you may get me a starting date? He's like, hell yeah, when can you get up here? You know, I could be up there 2 weeks. I'll tell Don, man, we got you a starting date. You know, I'm going to need maybe about $800. Business isn't real great, but, you know, we'll do what we can. And what do you think, man? You need any help with that book? And he's like, well, you know, yeah, I mean, I always need help. You know, I'll talk to Don. All right, baby, I'll see you in a couple weeks. And I hang up, right? Like I'm supposed to let him off the hook. Yeah. Again, I'm supposed to. No. Because I'm about to start laughing. I just hang up the phone. And Brian's like, dude, you got to let him go. Because I just got Tommy Rich booked in Portland.
So there's the Undertaker's rendition of Wildfire. What do you think about that, Tommy?
Hey, I knew him before he was Undertaker. I knew him in Tennessee as Mark Callis. And he'd always imitate me a little bit, but to hear that story, I always wondered, you know, Roddy Piper always told me how cool it was to work for Don Owen out in Oregon and how good the territory was, close trips and just this, that, and the other. And I always wanted to go, but I could never get booked there. And that's why I could never get booked there, because he booked me one time and I didn't show up. I didn't know I was supposed to be there.
You had to eat with Don Owen, didn't know why, because you no-showed a booking you didn't know you had. Dang Undertaker. Well, that's fun. So how many people over the years have done impressions of you to you?
Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, my old voice, everybody likes to imitate it. I don't know why, but yeah. Shoot, everybody does the Tommy Rich version.
There's a handful of distinctive voices in wrestling, and Tommy Rich is one of them. Macho Man Randy Savage is another one. But you know, I mean, to me, that's just another thing that makes you cool and makes you stand out. Because I mean, you do that voice, and people are like Tommy Rich, they know exactly who you're referring to. So,
oh, I've been back before, you know, we was on the phones all the time. Like I'd have to call the hotel, the operator. I'd have to talk to the operator. She says, "Is this Tommy Rich?" Because of that voice, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I think, how the hell you got? That's for all that stuff, you know. So
right.
Yeah, I've got one of them voices.
Nothing wrong with that. And then before we get into our topic for today's show, over on my weekly USWA review show, this past week we were reviewing the September 4th, 1993 episode. And it was pretty cool, man. They announced that you were going to be coming back into the territory. You were going to challenge Jeff Jarrett for the USWA title. At this point, Jeff's the fabulous one, Jeff Jarrett. And so they show a promo video of you. And I don't know if you remember this. You're standing in a bathroom. Allegedly, it's your bathroom. You're like, I'm in my bathroom. And you're in a suit. And you cut a promo on Jeff. And you pull a picture of Jeff out of your pocket. And you flush it down the commode. And so they bring Jeff out in the studio. So as I'm watching this, I haven't seen it since 93. I don't remember. But I'm thinking in my head, like, well, all right. Tommy sent in a video. He's not in the studio that day. So Jeff gets out there cutting a promo, and he's talking some pretty good stuff about you. Then all of a sudden, here you come out of nowhere, and you attack Jeff in the studio, and y'all have a pretty good little brawl around the ring there. And me and my co-host, Josh Briley and Richard Mullican, we were talking about, I was like, man, that was so cool. We were caught off guard because you just assumed back then, anytime somebody sent in a video, they weren't there. So when you come out there and attacked him, everybody's like, whoa, shit, we didn't know. We weren't expecting Tommy to show up and attack him in the studio. So that was pretty cool. Our question was, since it looked like you were wearing the same suit in the video as you were when you attacked him in the studio, was that just like a bathroom there in the studio, or was that like down the road at a hotel or something? And clearly you weren't at home.
That was at my house. I just had one suit.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
That's fair.
That was another day, but yeah, that's the only suit I had.
Well, there you go. We thought we were so smart. Like, yeah, that wasn't even really his house. That was just in the studio. No, it was. You had one suit. That's awesome. Well, you had two, but you ruined the other one when Eddie Gilbert attacked you in the Fabulous Ones angle. So then you were down to one at that point, I guess.
You
had that baby blue suit that he got blood all over. So we're going to take a trip back to 1985, Tommy, and the end of April. You head into Continental. Your first night in, you're going to be tagging up with Steve Armstrong, taking on the Nightmares. And tell me a little bit about what you remember about. Well, this time it hasn't transitioned to Continental. Or actually, it's still Southeastern for a couple of more, about another month and a half, I guess. But what do you remember about dealing with Ron Fuller and that promotion in particular?
Well, I was lucky with it Southeastern. We were talking about that today, as a matter of fact. I was talking to, I've got the Wildfire Championship Wrestling. Mm-hmm. We got a big show coming up in April the 12th. And it's one of those schools that Smoky Mountain and Southeastern. And I couldn't think of Southeastern. I was there before Smoky, and then wrestled there for Cornette too. But anyway, yeah, Ron, I went down there and wrestled. It's when I'd done a stint in Atlanta. And then I went down and worked up there for them. And then from Southeastern, they bought the Continental Championship, Ron did. And anyway, we went down there, and God, what of course, the Knoxville territory they had was good too. It drawed good money. And Robert too. Robert, his brother. I mean, he was smart as far as booking in. Robert was real smart with the angles, and so they always did good business. I mean, and paid good too. I mean, they were one of the boys, so they paid like the boys, not like some of these other promoters did back then.
Right. So you came in, like I say, you teamed with Steve initially, Steve Armstrong, and then eventually you start tagging with your cousin, Johnny Rich. And it's funny because over the years, different people have assumed that, oh, that's them, they're wrestling cousins. They're not really cousins. And then, I eventually learned years later, like, no, that's actually Johnny Rich is actually Tommy's cousin. That's right.
Yes, but going back to the Armstrong for just a minute, I mean, I grew up with them when I first started in the business for Jarrett. The Armstrongs that come in, Bob Armstrong, he came in, and back then he was Bullet Bob. He didn't wear the mask. He just was Bob Bullet Ball Armstrong. But I got to know his kids, and they were kids, kind of like Doug and Eddie, I mean, I grew up like with their dads and then grew up with them too, so it was pretty cool. I mean, the Armstrongs, like I said, they came in and they played tennis, and I'd go over and try to play tennis. I wasn't much, but Gail, Bob's wife, I mean, she played tennis, and they'd go over there, Iroquois Apartments. They was right there off of Charlotte Pike, right there somewhere. And anyway, but the Armstrongs, big wrestling family there too. I mean, God bless him, Brad's gone now, but Steve, Scott, the whole family, they all wrestled, did well. And then like you said, then me and Johnny teamed up. He come to Tennessee at first though, and he wrestled as Roy Rogers.
That's right, yeah.
Didn't want nobody to know that he was a rich. So wrestled as Roy Rogers. Yeah, that was kind of a joke, but hey, he got the gimmick over. He got it over. And then later we went to, of course, he went to Georgia, and then we went to Continental, and of course we wrestled the Nightmares, Danny Davis, and Buddy Wayne's son, Kenny Wayne, what his name was. But anyway, but it was good business. I mean, that Nightmares, they were over, and Johnny and me, we were over as a tag, babyface tag team, and we just had it was a good chemistry too. I mean, we would tear the building down. I remember the Monday night at the Boutwell Auditorium, and it'd just be jam packed to the rafters, man. But the talent was so good back then. I mean, from top to bottom. I don't even know if you know any of the rest of the card, but I know if we were wrestling them, that the rest of the card had to be, some good names on it. I mean, Ron and them, they always run, had a good Southern Wrestling Championship going on down there.
So let's take a look at June 5th. You guys were in a tag team tournament there. So let's go through some of the matches in the tournament. So like you had, in this particular instance, you were teaming with Johnny. So you had Bullet Bob teaming up with Steve Armstrong. They wrestled Bill Ash and Chick Donovan in the opening match.
Oh, Bill Ash, his dad made wrestling boots. You know that?
Yeah, that's what people have told me, that that was kind of what he was known for.
Yeah, I mean, I think he ended up carrying on his father's business. But, yeah, Bill Ash, I mean, what a heck of a worker he was. He was a good worker. I was trying to think of who else he teamed up with. He teamed up with somebody, and they draw good money together, but I can't remember who it was. I want to say it's another Southern boy. He didn't team with Dream Machine, did he?
He might have when he was in the area, when he was Troy T. Tyler at the time, maybe?
Yeah,
with that team then?
Troy T, that's right. Boy, he was Dream Machine. Troy T. Yeah. I don't remember. But anyway, he drawed. I can't think of who it was. I don't think it was him because this was in Continental. But anyway, but Bill Ash, man, of course, his dad made them boots and everything. But he was a good talent. He took the business over, his boot business, didn't he?
I believe so. Yeah, I think it's because I remember by the time I was snooping around wrestling in like 97, there were still people getting boots from Bill Ash that they said, I was like, Bill Ash, like the guy from Continental, because I grew up going to them matches in Columbus and everything. I was like, the guy from Continental, like, yeah. I'm like, he makes boots, like, his dad did, and then he took it over from there. I was like, oh wow, okay.
Shit, he probably made money doing that, and he did wrestling.
Shit, you ain't kidding. Because I mean, back then there was only a couple of like 2 or 3 people that you could get boots from, and then like K&H as far as getting tights and stuff like that. That was lucrative.
And K&H, they just had the, just leather ones where Mr. Ash, he had the patent. He was like one of the first to do the patent leather stuff. Of course, you had them in Texas that would make them like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, and they knew how to make them back then, man, because there's guys now that are wearing boots that were made back then. They've been sold this wrestler to this wrestler to this wrestler. You know, they've been passed down.
Doug, me and him had a pair made at the same time, a pair of white and a pair of black. And excuse me, he said, but Doug still got his black pair. Doug still has them. He's had them retoed and sold on them. Mine, I don't know where mine are, but yeah. Hey, Dougie, they last forever. We got them made in Texas, as a matter of fact.
So the second match in the tournament, now these are some guys you're familiar with. All of these guys. You got the Oates brothers, Jerry and Ted Oates, taking on Brett Sawyer and Scott Armstrong.
Well, that had to be a good little match.
Yeah, and then next match you got Boomer Lynch and the Flame, which would have been Jody Hamilton, taking on Mr. Olympia and Robert Fuller.
Yep, that'd been a good match.
Absolutely. And then you get to, even in the tournament, Johnny and Tommy Rich are taking on the Nightmares, 1 and 2. This is when the Nightmares were still masked. And, man, you guys, I mean, that was such a great feud. I mean, you guys got a lot of mileage out of that, man. You took their masks, you took their hair. Poor Johnny got tarred and feathered and kicking suit. Like y'all weaved in and out of all kinds of great stuff.
Oh, but that's what's so good. Everybody was so easy. If it was going to draw money, everybody was down for it. I mean, Johnny was a sport getting tarred and feathered. Like I had my head shaved and get all that old syrup and feathers dumped on me. He about smothered, sucking him. I remember sucking him like the syrup and the feathers down his throat. He was, he was a good sport. Johnny was. Yeah, thank God. I would have had to done it if he didn't. Yeah.
So, I mean, would they slip you a few extra bucks nights that you had to do stuff like that, or was it just taking one for the team most of the time?
Probably more so taking one for the team, to be honest. But I mean, we got, like I said, it drawed money, so we got paid for putting asses in the seats. I mean, so it all worked out. I mean, we did what we was asked to do. I mean, but didn't nobody do nothing they didn't want to do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, somebody, if you had wanted you to do something, you had a beef, then you say something, you might get a bonus or something. But pretty much everything, like I said, the Fullers, they paid good anyway. I mean, I've never had no complaints with them. And of course, back then is when we first, especially for the babyface, that's when we first really started selling 8x10 pictures. And so me and Johnny, we were selling, I mean, we were like the top guys. So we were selling, probably making more on gimmicks than we did on our paycheck.
I can imagine. I remember going to Columbus and you guys being out there at intermission and like you couldn't get to the table because the whole time it was just surrounded, like you guys were just surrounded by people. And of course you had a table full of pictures and people were snatching them up by them as quick as y'all could sign them.
Fans, T-shirts. I mean, it was like Joe's flea market,
Yeah.
But everybody wanted something. So, we did the Polaroids, remember the old Polaroids?
Oh yeah.
Polaroid pictures. That's when it, we really first, like when I was with Georgia Championship Wrestling, we didn't really, nobody ever asked to sell nothing, but nobody was ever offered to sell nothing either. And so Continental was the first place that I think that I really ever first started, that the gimmick started selling for me.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of stories about, I know like, Danny Davis has bought Camaros and, people have made down payments on homes and all kinds of stuff strictly from, picture money, as they call it. So good stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was good. And then you talking about Danny Davis, and they didn't hardly come out and sign them. They would just sell them at a table.
Mm. So next match you got, and here's a guy who sold a couple of pictures in his time in Alabama, at least. Austin Idol and Pork Chop Cash taking on Lord Humongous, which I guess that would have been Jeff Van Camp at the time, and the Eliminator. That's a fun team, Austin Idol and Pork Chop Cash.
Ooh, that would have been a tough match, I bet.
I bet. I'm not sure who the Eliminator was, but I know that.
That's what I'm saying. I don't. Yeah, but I mean, Lord Humongous, he don't sound like he going down for nothing either.
No, Jeff Van Camp hadn't been in the business for real long at this point, and he was a big old guy. So, and of course, you know, I imagine it was a tough night for Pork Chop Cash because I'm sure Idol wasn't in there taking much of the heat. So,
and I bet Pork Chop wasn't either. They kind of both showboat, you know. I mean, I cringe thinking about it. I'd have probably been with them too. Yeah. I mean, I don't know who the eliminator was, but it don't sound good.
So the next match, the Riches get eliminated from the tournament by the Flame and Boomer Lynch. What can you tell us about Boomer Lynch?
Boomer Lynch. You tell me something about him. Who was it? Then maybe I can.
I'm trying to think of what his real name was, like Lintz, like Lintz. But he did a different gimmick, like up in the AWA. He was like Ali Khan or something like that. But for some reason, when he came down south, the Fullers called him Boomer Lynch and made him part of the stud stable. But I don't know a lot about him. That's why I was curious if you knew anything.
I don't either. I mean, Jody, of course, Jody speaks for himself. I mean, you know, the Assassin and the Flame. I mean, and Jody, big man, could move. You know, I know a lot about him, but the other fella, I'm not sure.
Well, they were getting behind them because you check this out here. So Boomer Lynch and the Flame, they beat Mr. Olympia and Robert Fuller in the first round. They beat you and Johnny in the second round. In the semifinals, they beat Austin Idol and Pork Chop Cash, and then they made it all the way to the finals. But their luck ran out because they got beat by Bullet Bob and Steve Armstrong in the tournament finals.
So they wrestled the Nightmares?
No, you guys put the Nightmares out of the tournament in the first round.
So what was the main event then?
The main event was the Armstrongs against Boomer Lynch and the Flame. And the Armstrongs won.
And the Armstrongs won. See, it was their time to get pushed.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what, I mean, Bullet and the Armstrongs, they was over in Continental. I mean, of course, they lived in Pensacola and very active in the town too. But, yeah.
I mean, in my school, like I was around like 8, 9 years old at this time, and I watched Continental and I watched Memphis because we got both and where I lived around Tupelo. And so, like, my friend, James Atkinson, his favorite wrestler was Bullet Bob Armstrong. And mine was Jerry Lawler. So we would have endless debates on the playground, like who would win between Armstrong and Jerry Lawler by 85. And we didn't even realize that they had plenty of matches a few years ahead of that. We just weren't aware of them at the time. But
hey, that's something the way it is now, you know, right off the get. Yeah,
exactly.
You might not never know. I mean, Bill Average was the only way, you know, that you knew anything about wrestling was the magazines.
Yep, it was a different time. So you guys go along through 85, you and it kind of alternates. Sometimes it's you and Johnny, sometimes it's you and Steve Armstrong, but just about every time you're getting in the ring, you are in there with a nightmare all across the territory here in Birmingham and Huntsville and all this different towns, Dothan, Montgomery. How did you like the Alabama territory? How did you like the travel and just the towns in general?
Man, see, I was so lucky. I mean, like I said, me and Johnny went to Southeastern when it was in Knoxville. And so I would go up there for the week and then come home on the weekend or, well, whatever days I could come home. And usually Sunday and Monday up there. But then went up there. So I was always close. I never went to like Charlotte to where you had to do all them miles or Louisiana. Yeah. And I was, you know, then I could wrestle in Tennessee, Atlanta, Tennessee, Georgia, and then in the Continental up, you know, on the other end. But I was always close to home too, you know, so I was very lucky with that. And that Continental, of course, we would go, like Johnny lived in Montgomery, so I would go stay with him. But then we'd like be down in Pensacola for 2 days. Well, shit, we'd load. He had a Bronco, and I had a 3-wheeler, and he had a 2-wheeler. We'd load them in the back, and we'd go. There's a closed down campground, and we'd up back there. I remember Scott, and Steve, and Brian. We'd all go back there and camp out for them 2 days, and it was on the bay. It's in the bay, And I remember Brian. He was just joining the military. He was a young buck, and of course we was too. But we got in a circle, like you remember when you played football, had bull in the ring.
Yeah.
Well, Brian was in the middle of the ring, and he'd run at us, and we'd hip toss him. And Brian, he'd come all night long. I mean, we just went out there and had a good time. I mean, Continental, I enjoyed. I really enjoyed Continental wrestling. Like I said, Ron was the owner, and of course he took us to the Cayman Islands. He had a place in the Cayman Islands. We went to the Cayman Islands for a weekend. I mean, it was cool, man. I'm so blessed to got to do some of the stuff I've done. And like the story with Undertaker. God, I've been involved in so much stuff. I mean, like Lawler hiding under the ring with Austin Idol. I mean, so much. And AWA when Wahoo was booking it. I did the angle with Kevin Kelly and Sherry Martel while I ripped her dress off.
That's right.
I've been involved in some cool stuff, man.
You have. I mean, it's like I said, when I got to going through match results, I mean, I've followed most of your career, but I missed a lot of the earlier stuff in the late 70s and the early 80s. But, going through these results for these podcasts, I was like, man, there's hardly anybody that you haven't wrestled or been somewhat directly involved with in your career. I mean, it's pretty amazing. All the different from, guys like the Sheik and people of that era all the way up to, Dusty Rhodes and the Hogans and all these different types of people. Like you've pretty much covered all the bases. So we're never going to run out of stuff to talk about here, right?
That's what 50 years gets you.
That's right. That's right. It's still going strong, man.
Yeah.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Pro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to USWApodcast.com.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
So you eventually...
Hey, when I went to Georgia, though, but Memphis was like that, too. I mean, some of the best wrestling talent come through Memphis, too. I mean, Memphis don't get the credit. I mean, everybody wanted to be on Channel 17, and which I was there at the right time, right place, and had the, a little skinny cornbread kid, all these big monsters coming in, and I could get the sympathy, and that's where I was so blessed. Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Jarrett taught me that. Jerry Jarrett taught me how to sell. Him and Tojo. And then the rest I learned in the ring, in which I learned how to sell the ring. But they told me that's the biggest commodity, especially, if I was a big bulk but Tony Atlas now, I've seen Tony Atlas get the crowd. He'd have them, 270, 80 pounds and ripped, and he could get the crowd with sympathy,
Yeah.
So, that's a main point in our business. And I understand that our business moves a lot faster today, but and they don't have time. Don't nobody sell nothing no more. So to sit back and just remember when I did it and what, it's two different styles now. And I got in on the best. Like I met the Funks, the Gilberts, I met that era, like you said, then a little bit before that, and then my era, and then the Armstrongs, the Gilberts, the kids. I've been so blessed to be with all of them. And when wrestling, you told a story, and people could sit back and watch it. Now it's like it's almost like a pinball game. But somebody told me that's what it is because they got to have them going boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Kids play them video games and everything. So that keeps the attention. But we used to tell a story. And I don't know that that's told all the time now because it moves so much quicker. I couldn't do, what them boys do today, I couldn't even be on the diving team and do some of them moves they do. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so a lot of respect to them guys. And it's shocking and amazing to me that they don't get hurt more than they do. So a lot of respect for them guys, and like I said, my business to what it is now it is different. I don't care what nobody says. It's a different style business now. I mean, I started in 1975, and it's 2024. So if it ain't evolved none, then we ain't doing something right. So, I just didn't evolve with the rest of it. I was in a scaffold match in Memphis, Tennessee. You talk about the high-flying stuff they do.
Yeah.
We were standing up on that thing, and I never did stand up, to be honest with you, Gene. I never did.
I don't blame you.
You could look out across that crowd, and we was you've been to the Memphis Coliseum.
Yes.
See the people up in the very top, they call them nosebleed section. I was up on that scaffold and didn't stand up, and I was looking eyeball to eyeball up there. You know what I'm saying?
And I've sat up there. I've been from the front row up to the nosebleeds, and man, I can't imagine seeing them people eye to eye.
Big moves from way up in there. I mean, it's just crazy to me. But I told Jerry when they put me in that, I said, "Shit, my wife cleans the gutters. I don't clean."
And Dundee was up there running around like it was nothing.
Oh Lord, yeah. Well, you see me and Austin, we both. They talk about falling from the top. I'd have been in a wheelchair today, Anyway, yeah, we both crawled about halfway down the field, if you noticed the field.
And that one, God, that was so super tall. Like they had that one y'all were on seemed like it was jacked up so much higher than like the normal ones you had been seeing for like Crockett.
Set up about 4 foot off the ground too. That Memphis ring was high too.
Yeah.
So it looked. I mean, and they measured the 20 foot from the top of the ring. So you 25 foot up in the air.
Yeah, you didn't even count that 5 feet to the floor from the ring. You're
yeah, that's what. Yeah. Oh, I did.
Yeah, you did.
But I did.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, man, that's I get that it's a different business today and everything, but I still think that they could implement more of the things you guys did. That I think the element of sympathy back then played a lot bigger part that they don't even try to play upon now. And I also think too that because of all the crazy bumps and the lack of selling, I don't think people really sympathize with wrestlers today. I don't think fans today think any of the stuff hurts and really feels bad for guys when they're taking those bumps, because they do pop back up and they're like, yeah, it's that ring's like a trampoline. It doesn't hurt. And, I watched, guys like you, and like I said, Jerry Jarrett, Ricky Morton, perhaps the most famous seller of all time in wrestling. I mean, people were out there just dang near in tears watching you guys, thought you guys were in there getting killed. And then when you came back, I mean, you'd see everybody come up on their feet and everybody went home happy. It wasn't because you did a cool move. It was because you took a beating and you didn't give up, you know?
Exactly.
But hey, it is what it is, right? We can't go back in time, but we can do podcasts and talk about it. And, that's what we're doing today. And so eventually you became the Continental Heavyweight Champion. I think you'd beat Jody Hamilton, the Flame, if I'm not mistaken, to win the title. And eventually, and several shows here, looks like in Oxford, Alabama, Pensacola, Birmingham, a couple places, you're defending the title against Exotic Adrian Street. Tell me what you remember about working with Adrian Street around this time.
God, you talk about a class act, Adrian Street, man. Him and his Miss Linda, she was tougher than he was. Don't get me wrong, he was a bad man. He was a fascinating man. But Miss Linda, she a barroom fighter. But I worked my angle with him, and I did get to know him, and just such cool, sweet, good people, man. Very good people. Always was a pleasure to work with Adrian, and she made it worth it more. But yeah, I've seen her. Some people like mess with him and her take care of the job. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But he would have killed him. You know what I mean? But yeah, she was tough. She was just tough.
People who didn't understand wrestling, and I mean, they would see him and they'd be like, "Yeah, we're gonna beat up that sissy after the show." And boy, were they in for a surprise, because him or her, either one, could tie them in knots and snap their neck if they wanted to. They thought they were the easy targets, and they were the toughest people on any show they were on. You know? Yeah. Where was he from? He was from Wales in England, like
Wales,
he was Welsh. They say.
Yeah. I was trying to think, but that's it, yeah. But and just that accent, he was always just cool and always smart. You never heard him say a bad word about nothing. And I was around him in Continental. He was in Continental some when I was there too.
Yeah, he made the rounds to all the different territories, and then eventually came back around in Continental as a babyface and had a whole second run, because he was a heel with that gimmick. And then by the late 80s, he started working as a babyface, and it got over well that way too. So he had quite the run in wrestling.
He was just they were just such good characters. I mean, and they'd seen him as a heel, and usually you take that heel and you work your angle as a heel, and then you turn a babyface when they're at the top of that heat. But he just came back and drew money as a babyface. I mean, he'd been there as a heel, and everybody loved to hate him. But when he come back just as it was good.
Yeah, they put him in that angle with Rip Rogers, because Rip Rogers had Miss Brenda with him, so Linda was able to square off with Miss Brenda, and Rip was able to square off with Adrian, and Adrian had that last big angle with Wendell Cooley, making fun of him being a cowboy and and all that.
Cooley, yeah,
Wildcat Wendell Cooley. He was a popular guy in Continental.
He drawed some good money in Continental. Sure did.
Absolutely. So it looks like, around October of 85, you guys were still feuding with the Nightmares. And around this time, we're having whipping matches. Loser gets 20 lashes, strap matches, things like that. Not my idea of a good time, but I'm sure it sold a lot of tickets for people wanting to see the Nightmares get strapped.
No, I always volunteered for that. I like getting whooped.
You'd rather get whooped than get covered in syrup?
Said, y'all whoop me, don't whoop nobody else.
Around this time, Ric Flair came into the territory, and you had a couple of matches with him for the NWA title. Looks like one in Boutwell in Birmingham, one in Pensacola. We've talked about Flair a little bit on this show, and I know, not necessarily you and Doug's favorite person for a variety of reasons, but how did you like working with him, as far as if he come in and they said, "Hey, Tommy, you're going to be working with Flair this week"? How did you feel about
it? Well, I knew the match would be good. I mean, just it's like we said, just same repetition every time. You know, like Harley Race, it'd be a different match every time you work with him, whereas Rick would be basically the same match. But you was going to wrestle 45 minutes to an hour, and it didn't matter. I mean, and Rick, hey, what a hell of a talent, best promo. I mean, so it was a night off.
Eventually, you guys start mixing in some 6-man tags. Here you got Tim Horner as a partner. What do you remember about old White Lightning and Tim Horner?
Oh, country ass boy. Up there around Morristown, Tennessee. Yeah. No, Tim, hey, him and Brad came into Atlanta pretty much around the same time, I think. But I got to know Tim real good, too. He's just old country boy. I guess he's some kind of city commissioner or something now in Morristown, I believe, if I ain't mistaken.
Yeah, that sounds right. I know he got into politics eventually.
I don't know what he is. I mean, I know he holds some office there in Morristown, I think.
Yeah, well, he's the hero of Morristown, right? I mean, I don't figure there's a more popular resident to come out of Morristown, Tennessee than old Tim Horner.
We'll see. We go through there, you and me, Gene. We get a speed ticket. We'll see if he can help us out.
Hey, buddy, we know White Lightning, all right? Don't hassle us.
And we're here.
So eventually you guys end your feud with the Nightmares. You had Texas Tornado matches, Texas Death matches. Like I said, you guys unmasked them. You shaved their heads. You did everything you could do to them.
See, and you know how small that Continental, that territory, you know how small that was, actually. I mean, you figure you had, of course, Bout was every Monday night.
Yeah.
Then on Tuesday, they'd run Florence or some other show. I can't remember what they did on Wednesday. I mean, we worked 6 nights a week, but as far as big towns, they didn't. Huntsville, we had Huntsville.
Yeah, Huntsville and Montgomery, occasionally Mobile, Dothan.
They had a big, pretty building, but it sucked. It just didn't draw the. But yeah, Montgomery. But I think they didn't run that every week. I don't think.
No, that was. I don't know if it was every 2 weeks or once a month, but
I'm not sure either. I know about. I was just trying to think. Pensacola, I think, ran every week.
Yeah, wasn't that like Sunday or something like that, or was that Saturday night? Maybe
Friday,
or maybe Friday. I knew it was around the weekend because then everybody was like, "Yeah."
Dothan was a big day. It wasn't a big town, but it always drew good and would fill up. I mean, it was a good little territory. But I'm trying to think now. Like in Georgia, I can tell you, Monday night was Augusta, Tuesday night was Macon, Wednesday was Columbus, and on Thursday we do like Rome, Georgia, or Athens, Georgia. They ran them every 2 weeks. Friday was Atlanta City Auditorium. Then you did Atlanta TV. Then you go to Columbus, Georgia for TV, and then you do Jones or Carrollton, Georgia that night, or a spot show. But yeah, I can't remember I can't remember like the big towns though. It was, and Florence, they ran Florence like once a month. Florence was a good town. Yeah. But as far as weekly, I'm not remembering. Maybe Friday night and Pensacola was Saturday night, because that's when remember I said something about spending the weekend down there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I knew it was either Friday or Saturday night because I knew y'all was able to spend weekends in Pensacola. Everybody was pretty psyched about that. I know y'all would mix in like little towns in Mississippi, like where I used to go see it, Columbus, go down to Greenwood. There's a bunch of little towns in Alabama over there. And
that's crazy though. I can't remember most territories had every day, every day for a show. Yeah. I know Monday was about, then Tuesday we didn't have no Louisville Garden, I don't think.
Where did Huntsville fall into that? Was it weekly or was that monthly?
See, and back then, I think Huntsville might even belong to Nick Goulas.
Oh, yeah. Well, Goulas would have been out by then, though.
Same time period.
Yeah.
You might have to look into that.
Yeah, we might have to study up on that before we go back over this again. After you guys finished up with the Nightmares, you started having some matches with Robert Fuller and Jimmy Golden. We talked a little bit about Robert Fuller, but what do you remember about Jimmy Golden, old Bunkhouse Buck?
Hey, one time when I was wrestling for Southeastern up in Knoxville, Jimmy just bought a damn new Thunderbird. We come back and it broke down on him, and he was pouring vodka, whiskey, or something out there on the engine, gonna set it on fire. So they come pick it up. Oh, Jimmy was cool. Yeah, I love Jimmy. Hey, he was part of that trip in Sisterville, West Virginia with me and Doug. Jimmy was on that show too.
Okay.
Yeah, me and Jimmy go way back, but Bill Golden. You remember Bill Golden?
I know the name. He was a little before my time, but I do remember the name.
I think that's his father, if I'm not mistaken. Now, don't quote me. But he promoted, I think, like he was there. I'm trying to think who was owned it back then. But the Goldens, remember the Welches, they owned Tennessee or Continental. But Bill Golden was his father, if I'm not mistaken. And they had like Anniston or Gadsden. They ran them towns. And it might have been Buddy Fuller that had it. Or the Fields, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, I just remember his father, Bill, and I met him. He come into Tennessee when I first started. He had come up and was working there. And just, he was always nice to me.
Yeah. Another name here listed that I know you was around in Continental and Georgia. Ted Allen. You have any memories of Ted Allen?
Hey, Ted was all around fella, man. He took the ring, and he worked. And when he did the Nightmare gimmick, and hey, what a hell of a worker.
Yeah.
Worker he was. He just didn't have he got that one run, I think, with the Nightmares when one of them left in Continental. He come down and did that Nightmare gimmick for a little bit. But he was a heck of a talent.
He's trained a lot of people over the years as well. I know one of the guys over here I did a lot of shows with around in Alabama and Georgia. Kyle Matthews was trained by Ted Allen and has always told stories about him in the locker room and, about what a good guy he was and what a good trainer he was and everything. So I wanted to ask you about him. I recently was watching some of the Georgia from '84, like right after Vince took over the TV spot on TBS and Ole started the championship wrestling from Georgia. I got a hold of some of that TV and was watching some of that. I know Ted Allen was on a lot of those, and you were on there. The tag team of Rip Rogers and Ted Oates, was it? This is the Hollywood Blondes.
Was it the tall one or the short one?
The short one.
That's Ted.
Ted, yeah. So that was fun. I had read about that over the years, but I never really got to see any of it. So I got to see some of that here recently. You had some matches with Bob Roop on there. How was he? I know he's not really in Continental. We're not talking about that at the moment, but he has a show here on WrestleCopia. So.
At the end, that's that's right before Ole lost it all, ain't it?
Mm-hmm.
Bob Root.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when Georgia Championship was on its way out.
How'd you like working with him?
He was all right. Wasn't my favorite person to work with.
Gotcha. Frankie Lancaster was down here. Go ahead.
He went to the Olympics. He's a bad man.
Oh yeah, that's nobody's ever said he wasn't a tough guy. I know, not one of Ron Fuller's favorite people, and there's a lot of stories about old Bob out there, trying to take people's territory, as they say. But
yeah,
we'll save that for another podcast. But
like I said, I don't know if I worked with him a couple of times, but I've heard more negative than I have positive.
Yeah, that's the consensus a lot of times with him. So by 86 here, see you win. This is something they did in Continental a lot. I got to see a few of these in Columbus down there. 2-ring battle royal you won in Birmingham. How did you like those 2-ring battle royals?
If I'd have got thrown out at the very beginning, I'd have loved them. Yeah. No, they were good. I mean, and that's just, it was that. I guess that was their hell in the cell back then. Double ring battle royal. I wasn't never a big fan of the battle royals. I just that wasn't my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Just so many ways that can go wrong. I didn't mind getting in the ring with somebody and doing whatever in a tag match or 6-man, even an 8-man. I've been in 10-man, but you tagged in and out, wasn't all the bodies in there, and just so easy to get hurt in them kind of things. My favorite battle royal though was the blindfold. You ever seen a blindfold battle royal?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, I have.
Now, if I was going to do a battle royal, that is the kind I want to be in. I love just walking around and missing the guy and, all of that. Yeah, I mean, that was cool. But to be in a regular battle royal, not my cup of tea.
I was a big fan of them as a kid, especially those 2-ring battle royals, because it just looked like a spectacle. Like when you came into the arena that night, you're like, whoa, there's 2 rings. That's crazy looking. But then as I got older, you start realizing, like, there really ain't a lot goes on in the battle royal. It's a lot of punching and kicking and choking because, like you said, there's no room to do. If anybody tries to do anything, somebody's going to get hurt, get fell on, or something.
My favorite thing was to see somebody tell one of these green kids to get a headlock on it. I'll shoot you off, drop down, and try to watch them wiggle through through the board. I mean, that's what I talk about is dangerous because they in there. They would actually do that.
Yeah.
So, crazy.
So let's see here. We're like I say, we're into 1986. Let's scroll through and see if we see anything of it. So all into 86 here. We get tied up in a feud. You guys, like I say, you're against Fuller and Golden. And then it's you and Steve and Johnny and Tom Prichard all get involved. And eventually Johnny loses and he ends up under a mask as the intern, and Tom Prichard becomes a doctor and, and all this. What do you remember about that big feud?
Hey, that's that's kind of like the mysterious Mr. R when I lost the lose and leave town. I mean, you could do simple stuff like that, and the people would just eat it up. They'd know what was going on, but they would eat it up, and the fans there, in Continental, of course, fans everywhere. I don't know what I'm saying. Georgia, all over the country. I mean, up in Ohio, man, just wrestling fans. I don't give a damn. They say what they want about football. Wrestling fans are the greatest in the world.
I agree. And in those kind of like the Mr. R and the intern and things like that, where the fans felt like it was y'all were all in on it. It was you and the fans getting over on the heel. That made it fun to them and made it seem kind of special. It was like, we know it's him, but you don't. You can't prove it.
Oh, yeah, most definitely.
Always a fun, all the territories, most all the territories anyway, would usually pull one of those, every so often, get a baby face out of town and put the mask on. But yeah, Tom Prichard's a doctor to this day. After that, he never lost his doctorate after that angle.
Tom Prichard, when I first met him, he cool. He had, I think, some kind of toy upset or something. We wrestled in Carrollton one night, and we coming back, and the car done hit a car on the side of the road. Tom Prichard done hit the car on the side of the road.
Oh, God.
That's where he got the name Doctor from, maybe. I don't know. Hit a parked car on the side of the interstate, though. That's pretty good.
Goodness. That's always bad news.
So I can ask him about that.
Yeah, we had him on one time. I'm sure we can persuade him to come on again. Now that you've joined the show, you can probably throw some stories like that out there that me and Doug didn't know to ask him. Before we wrap up, so like here, one of the last matches, you, the intern, and Steve Armstrong against Robert Fuller, Jimmy Golden, and Jerry Stubbs, which we mentioned Mr. Olympia earlier, but we didn't really elaborate. I don't know how much you got to work with him here or other territories, but did you get a chance to work with Jerry Stubbs very much in your career?
Yeah, I got Jeremy. Excuse me. Jeremy was good friends. He lived in Atlanta. He lived over in College Park, and I lived in Jonesboro. But he was working on TV and stuff, and then he got his break with the Fullers. But Jerry, he was a hell of a talent, man. Jerry was real good, very good friend of mine. But and when he did the Mr. Lee, never really drawed no money, Jerry Stubbs. But when he did the Mr. Lee thing in Continental, he drawed some money. And I was glad to see it because he was as good a worker, he could work his ass off.
Yeah, by all accounts from everybody I've talked to, me and Doug's put him over a lot on this show, was that, Jerry liked being in that Continental territory, being on the beach down in Pensacola, like you said, the short drives. And, Jerry could have probably had success in any territory he wanted to, but he liked, he did that Mid-South territory early, those hellacious drives. He had that tag team as Mr. Olympia with JYD that, was super over. But they said after that, he chose to kind of stay in Continental and have those short trips and be home every night and everything. But man, I think he could have been huge in, Jim Crockett Promotions or pretty much anywhere he wanted to go.
Yeah, when he put the mask on, did the mission, he was off the race. I mean, when I met him, he was in Atlanta doing TV, doing jobs and stuff. And then next thing I hear, he's down there, in which he was like I said, a hell of a worker. And went to Continental. You always love to see, somebody get a break like that. And that's what, when it was territories, that's what's so good about it. Because whether you got a break in Atlanta, you might learn something in Atlanta. You might go to Florida, and then you might land in Continental, but you're ready to get that break. It ain't like you're one and done. I mean, like now, if you don't do it in today's world, if you don't make it the first chance, then you don't get another. I mean, you got what, WWE and AEW and maybe one other one or whatever.
Maybe TNA is a last resort, but
I mean, but them, so out of the three, whereas back when I started, hell, there was 20 territories probably, if not more than that, because, counting Canada and all of that. Probably.
Yeah, I was going to say probably more when you started.
So there was a lot of opportunity there for, and plus you could get better because you wrestled 6 nights a week. So, and you could make a living, whether you're the best in the world. You might not get, like I said, get the opportunity here that you would get in Florida. But if you learned here, when you went to the next territory, they call and say, "Hey, we'll send this kid to you, and he's improving." So and plus you work, as long as you work 6 nights a week, you can make a living doing something you love to do. So, and the talent, and I'll say it from now till I die, that your first match was as good as your last match because of the talent. I mean, you didn't get in this business if you couldn't work back then,
No.
It was, that, and like I said, you can make a living, or you learn and you get a bump up, or you quit the business, But if you was all in, you can make a living, and if you got a chance, then boom. There's some that never got a chance, but they chose to just travel territory to territory and make a living, doing something you love to do. I've never worked a day in my life because I love doing what I do, and I'm 68 now, and still love to go and see the folks and try to get in there and wrestle a little bit. I still love to do it.
That's awesome, man. And you know what? Let's talk about where you're going to be doing some of that. Coming up March the 1st, you and Doug are going to be headed to the Jackson Comic Expo at the Carl Perkins Civic Center in Jackson, Tennessee. You're going to be there from 9 a.m. to, I believe it's about 3 p.m. that afternoon, 4 p.m., something like that. You guys are going to be meeting and greeting, signing autographs. And I know you guys always enjoy those types of opportunities to get to meet the fans and see everybody.
Oh yeah, and then that night we're going to be in Blytheville, Arkansas, doing a fundraiser for the St. Jude's Hospital. So looking forward. Yeah, it's always fun to come back home to Tennessee, and especially get to hang out with my Bubba Doug, and just to go see the fans, man, because this is where we all started. It was Tennessee, me and Doug both. So yeah, excited about that. Then March 7th, I'm gonna be in Fedge Creek, Kentucky, and the 8th I'm gonna be in Vergy, Kentucky. So yeah, I got a lot of stuff coming up, man. Just excited about it.
I know you mentioned that one earlier, April the 12th. Man, I keep seeing stuff about that one. You're going to be there. Ronnie Garvin's going to be there. Bobby Blaze, like Bill Apter. Y'all got a big one coming up there.
Yes, sir. Well, and it's for the flood thing. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I hadn't got all the details yet. I just know I'm going to be there. Looking forward to, throwing a hand in, helping any way we can, man.
Well, that's awesome, and I know it's much appreciated by everybody up there. And of course, you will be there on April the 12th. Doug, it was announced today, will be at EPW's Crossroads Clash in Corinth, coming up on April the 12th. And so you can look for him there, depending on what area you're in. You can go see these guys. Doug will also be at the Chester County High School Friday, March the 14th, along with Spellbinder, Kevin White, Jeremiah Plunkett, number of guys for a big fundraiser up there for the Carl Perkins Center. A lot of good stuff coming up, man. You guys are still out there making it happen for the 35th anniversary of the Memphis Mafia, out there on the road, still making towns, making it happen. And that's awesome. Well, we don't have Doug here this week to do our closing line that we always have. Tommy, you may have to improvise one here to get us out of here.
Hey, everybody, click us in, do whatever it is Dougie always tells you to do, and peace out, baby.
There it is.
Before we get out of here, I just want to take a moment to remind everyone, if you have an upcoming wrestling show, autograph signing, collector show, Comic-Con, or any event or booking that you would like to inquire about the services of Dangerous Doug Gilbert and or Tommy Wildfire Rich, just send us an email at douggilbertpodcast@outlook.com, and someone will get back to you as soon as possible to get more information on your event and do the best we can to make that happen. Also, if you are interested in advertising your event, your business, your product to the listeners of Dangerous Conversations, as well as to promote your event, business, or product across all our social media platforms, you can send that inquiry to douggilbertpodcast@outlook.com. We would love to work together with you to get that out there to the listeners of Dangerous Conversations. Remember to check out douggilbertpodcast.com. There you can find links to all things related to this podcast, as well as Doug and Tommy themselves. You'll find a link to the Dangerous Conversations Facebook page and the Dangerous Conversations Twitter, now known as X. And we're always posting content daily, involving the Gilbert family, Tommy Rich, all sorts of things from their career. We got magazine articles, videos, pictures, you name it. We're posting new content every single day. Make sure you follow so you don't miss out on any of that. Plus, you can follow Doug and Tommy's personal Facebook pages on there. Dangerous Doug Gilbert. You can search that on Facebook. You can also search Tommy Wildfire Rich. They both have Facebook pages. And Doug does have an X page as well, and you can follow them there. But if you really want to help support, you can go to the Gilbert Family Pro Wrestling Tees store, which there's a link to there on the douggilbertpodcast.com, and you can find t-shirts of Doug, Eddie, and their famous father, Tommy Gilbert, as well. Also, Tommy Rich is going to be having some t-shirts coming up very soon. Follow him on Facebook. We'll be talking about him here. But look for some cool new Tommy Wildfire Rich t-shirts coming out soon that you can partake in as well. Also, if you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on the platform of your choice. It would really help us in building up the podcast for the future.
Plus, it helps us know what you like, what you don't like, where we need to take this podcast moving forward. Also, if you want to see a whole bunch of matches, promos, and angles, a lot of the ones that you're going to hear us talk about on this very podcast, you can go and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@RetroWrestlingArchive. Of course, it's linked right there at douggilbertpodcast.com. And you will find a ton of matches featuring Eddie Gilbert, Tommy Gilbert, Doug Gilbert, Tommy Wildfire Rich. There's playlists of all them that feature hundreds of matches of each of them. So make sure you go check that out. And not just of them, there are thousands, literally, at this point, of videos from wrestling from across the territory days, you name it. If we don't have the video uploaded to our channel, we at least have organized you a playlist of just about every territory, every show that's out there. You can find it in one convenient location there on YouTube at the Retro Wrestling Archive. Plus, don't forget, you can find all things related to my popular Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast at uswapodcast.com. And last but certainly not least, we are proud to be a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Go on over to WrestleCopia.com to check out all the great pro wrestling related podcasts and various content that our friend Ray Russell provides you. You'll be glad you did. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week for another episode of Dangerous Conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert and Tommy Wildfire Rich.
In the heart of Tennessee, born with pride, Doug and Tommy taking rings in stride. Memphis legends never backing down, wrestling warriors, they wear the crown. You scurry away, glory in their veins, fighting legends breaking chains. In the squared circle they made their name. Podcast champions, it's their claim to fame. On the mic they rode, on the map they sold. Dangerous conversations, fans wanting more. Podcast kings ruling the waves. Memphis wrestling raising the stage. From title belts to Hall of Fame, Doug and Tommy carved the name. Fists of fury and hearts of gold. Every story, every fight retold. Tales of glory, laughter, proud. Tennessee warriors with hearts open wide. In the ring or on the air, legends living without a care. On the mic they roar, on the mat they soar. Dangerous conversations, fans wanting more. Podcast kings ruling the waves. Memphis wrestling raising the stage.